Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and it's Q&A, so anything goes, so go ahead and fire away.
Go ahead, Chris, then Ralph.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, Craig. A couple questions, please. I just got my incense body powder.
Ooh,
And
yeah.
what's the recommended use for that?
So like take the cap off and put just like a little tiny dab in the hand and then kind of rub it and then do like over the head like that. You could also do it on the chest, but usually like over the head, like the forehead area is where to do it.
Okay, like just during the day or before
During the
sleep?
day, but especially before meditation. Traditionally, it was used for yoga, but you could use it for like meditation, healing, or before sleep. Good to use during the day. I mean, it has a pretty strong scent to it. And so, you could wear it like you would essential oils.
Oh, okay, got it.
Got a lot of aloes in it. It has a lot of, powdered out aloes.
I guess I didn't know what to expect, so it's a nice surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I'm asking for a friend suffering from nausea from, forgive me if I don't pronounce this correctly, it's gastroparesis. Wondering if there's an oil for that.
So what's going on? What's the condition?
Gastroparesis. Paresis.
Spell it for me.
Gastroparesis.
Okay.
Apparently,
Also called delayed gastric emptying, is a medical disorder consisting of weak muscular contractions of the stomach resulting in food and liquid remaining in the stomach for prolonged periods of time.
Cinnamon or cassia?
cinnamon or cassia.
Internal.
Taken internal. Okay.
Yeah.
I have quite a number of.
It's not necessarily for the nausea, it's for the stomach movement. For nausea, you can use, let's go through and look at the book, but the nausea is being caused by poor muscle movement. And so give me just a second here. Where did the class go? What do we call that class? Just study group or?
Yeah, the last week or a couple weeks ago one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Class conditions, there we go.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, with something like that, ginger or peppermint can also be good for just the nausea part. But the cinnamon or the cassia will be very good for strengthening the muscle and helping the rhythm of the digestive tract to help with, just moving everything. And so that should greatly reduce the nausea. It probably won't be immediate, but after a few dosages, they should start to notice a difference.
Okay, and taken internal.
Yes, all of that.
And question.
Mhm.
Number of folks at work and some of my friends have this thing that's not COVID, but is throat related.
Oh my God, it's totally going around. Like over the last 2 weeks, I mean, we're aware of like 6-8 cases very easily. So what also happened was a couple of the cases didn't test positive, but several days later, they did test positive for COVID. And then several of them did not. So just because they haven't tested positive, I'd still keep checking, just in case. I mean, it was about 3 or 4 days after the symptoms. So what I've been having people do, like normally with like a sore throat, we would use bay laurel, but this is actually very interesting. The issue here is there's a lot of inflammation in the throat and can even cause laryngitis. And so I've been having people for the inflammation use like German chamomile or yarrow, take a few drops internally and then gargle. And then for laryngitis, I want to say it's lemon, but I have to look it up.
And she just got sick, and then a couple weeks later got sick again with
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
That's
You know, this is what I would say about that is, you know, hoping that, laryngitis. Give me a second here. I'm a boy. I don't multitask very well.
That's okay.
Psychological. Where did I have the laryngitis? Oh, it's under respiratory. Okay. Yeah. So okay. So the laryngitis, even if they're not really displaying laryngitis, I would still treat it. To be honest with you, several people have had, you know, issues with the vocal cords becoming inflamed or starting to lose their voice a little bit. And so you have a couple of choices. Lemon, again, internal or gargling. Same with these other two, which is Kayaput or Naoli. You know, Kayaput and Naoli are both in the Maluka family, which is, you know, in the family of tea tree, but tea tree doesn't always work that great for this, but the Kayaput, Kayaput would probably be my first choice, but you probably don't have that unless you have it from an old kit. It was in an old kit like quite a while ago, but lemon or Naoli, you probably have in something. And so what was the other piece? Like I said, I'm a boy, I don't multitask very well. You're asking me something else.
Yeah, so the laryngitis was,
Yeah, the laryngitis is what I just
and they just got over what seemed like COVID, and then she,
oh, that's where I was going. So this is the thing is you know, we haven't seen this with COVID up to now, and I'm not sure that this is what's happening, but pre-COVID, there was types of flus that we would treat where the person would get sick. This went on, I'd say up to maybe 8-10 years prior to COVID. The person would get sick and they would be sick for a while, like 7-10 days. And then they would start kind of pulling out of it, and then they'd do another wave of being sick. And so even though COVID has happened, you know, we have the COVID like long form and all these things. Whenever you're dealing with a virus, it doesn't always behave the same. I mean, it is literally kind of like a bar fight. Like it's picking up bottles and trying to come at you, and you're breaking a bottle and trying to go at it. And I would just say, keep throwing stuff at it, even though like a person has gotten better from COVID, I would still do things to keep the body getting stronger, because at some point, if this is not what's happening, there's always the potential that that could happen. And so remember, like 8-10 years prior to COVID, I mean, I would have patients that we'd go through and we'd be treating quite aggressively. And they would get sick and they'd reach out to me and we'd start treating them. They'd already been sick like 3 or 4 days. And once a virus kind of gets like starts its process in the body, it's hard to just stop it in its tracks. Part of what you do at that point, like if you can catch it right at the beginning, sometimes you can knock it out. But if it's 2, 3, 4 days into it, a lot of times you're just trying to keep the body as healthy as possible as you go through the cycle of the virus. And so, you know, we would always try to knock it out, but most times you're just trying to keep the body strong. They would end up being sick for like 4 weeks or so. You know, they'd peak, they'd get better, and then they'd go back. And they had people around them that, you know, didn't do treatment and they were just trying to ride it out the good old fashioned way with just a little bit of rest and everything. They were usually sick longer, like 6-7 weeks. I had one person that they had a friend who got it about the same time. They were sick almost 3 months. And so you know, this starts to sound a little bit like when people are talking about the long COVID. It's like a kind of a variation of that. But the thing with viruses is they are all over the place and they mutate. And you know, one of the things that I used to discuss with Master Choa was the level or degree that viruses and bacteria mutate when there is a lot of solar flare activity. And even in the normal everyday news, they're talking about how there's extreme solar flare activity right now. So that means viruses and bacteria are going to mutate. You know, it's almost like they go hand in hand. And so there was a very big, I don't know what you'd call it, like an incident where there was a sunspot that grew like 2 or 3 times the size in about a day or two. And it was directed, you know, right at the Earth. And then shortly after that, we started seeing all these different illnesses. And so I was actually pulling information together for MCKS back in the day about this phenomenon. And so that's one of the very first things that happens with solar flare activity is mutations and viruses and bacterias. And so, you know, basically, when I was presenting it to him, he said, this is going to be an issue at some point, like the, you know, infectious diseases are going to be an issue, meaning not just like now we're dealing with COVID, it could be multiple things. And so, you know, I hope this isn't the case. But we're really doubling down on doing a bunch of research on just different approaches to different bacterial infections, different viral infections, and just gathering up a bunch of data so that when the time comes, we can just have things locked and loaded and ready to go. And so I'm not even sticking with just essential oils. You know, I'm looking at other ways of trying to address this. And you know, the good thing about viruses, like when we had the COVID, is over a period of time they keep mutating and they almost become like more contagious, but at the same time they are like weakened in the effect that they have on people. And so like now you don't have quite the issue that you did like say 2 years ago or a year and a half ago or whatever it is, but it's still kind of contagious. And so you know, keep working on the immune system, keep doing the things that we know. Like when in doubt, like time is always a good thing. You know, benchmark time, especially time Thuanol, time Geranol. For children, time Linalol with an L, Linalol, really good. Even things like the lemongrass, cinnamon, you know, savory, oregano, and bacterial infections. Again, thyme is always good, but bay laurel is always incredible. And I mean, always kind of be working with bay laurel on the body or Eucalyptus radiata, Ravensara, Neoli, you know, just keep the body as strong as possible. One of the things that I like to do sometimes when somebody's really having an impact with long-term like flus and things, you know, it's super depleting to the body. Like, you know, that's why like the thymes, especially the softer thymes, can be very helpful, as well as Ravensara. Ravensara is very good for kind of fortifying the body. Neoli can be very good for strengthening the body and kind of doing it in a quick way. You know, it can still be used like long term, but it kind of brings the fire back to the body really quick. But the other things to to look at is there can be a little bit of, it's not necessarily depression. Like in the old days, I used to refer to it as like melancholy. Like, it's not quite like super depressed and bummed out, but you just are like, you don't have any pep in your step. You're a little bit depleted and, left to your own devices. You're like, yeah, I could get up and do some work around the house, or I could also lay on the couch. I might just lay on the couch. It's like that kind of thing. Melissa can actually be very good. It can be very fortifying. It's strengthening. It's unnerving. It's pricey, but it would need to be taken internal. If you want to try to get around the price of the oil, which I get, it's a pricey oil. You can go to the health food store and get some Melissa. It's also labeled as lemon balm, right? Lemon balm or Melissa, it's the same thing. And I mean, I would take 4 or 5 capsules like at a time, like, a couple times a day. You can take big dosages of that. In the old days, I used to have them do teas, but you'd have to find loose herb and you'd have, that's too complicated. Just get some capsules and pop them. Still not as strong as taking the oil, but it's better than nothing. And so anything that is kind of like fortifying to the body / like nervines, chamomills kind of do it. They're just not as fortifying as Melissa is. Melissa is very strengthening, and in a pinch, if you don't have that, use things that are like kind of balsams, like fir balsam, or like even frankincense and myrrh, evergreens, firs, spruces, but big dosages, like, 15, 20 drops in something and rub it on the chest or on the back or something like that. So with the person getting sick again, the immune system needs to be jump started. Their energy body needs to be jump started a little bit. And so any version of any of that would be helpful. You're just needing to survive the life cycle of the virus. It's usually not so much when the virus is active, but basically it just leaves it like your body a mess, and your body is just trying to clean up from what the virus did. And so support the body, strengthen the body to go through and clean these things up. And it should help to reinforce the body not to get sick again. But you also, it's hard to say. And so I always like to throw some work on the skin in this as well. So going back to like parsley or spikenard or helichrysum, even hyssop, like a hyssop bath can be really good for strengthening, cleaning up the skin. And so any version of any of this can be helpful at this, but basically you're just picking up whatever tools you have access to and just start throwing it at this condition.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, because if they're getting sick again, even when they come out of it, their body is going to be depleted, and there is a high probability that they would get sick again. It might be a couple months down the road, and so I always look at it as like, I want the person to get better right now, and I don't want them to get sick 2 or 3 months from now, so, help them get better now, because there is a lot of inflammation, whatever this is, there's a lot of inflammation in the throat, like a lot. The only time I've ever seen this kind of inflammation has either been strep or tonsillitis, and they're not having either one. They don't have strep, they don't have tonsillitis, yet there is this level or degree of inflammation in the throat. So cut down the inflammation, strengthen the body, and help them recover, and then help them not get sick again.
Thank you so much. One more question.
Yeah, fire away. Yeah. I mean, I think this is a really good topic. Like this is something that is, we are right in the middle of it right now. I mean, before 2 weeks ago, I hadn't heard any of this. In the last 2 weeks, I mean, we're up to probably 10, 12 cases.
I mean, at work, it's one after the other.
Yes, yeah. Whatever it is, I mean, it's a good chance it's a variation of COVID. You know, it might not be showing up as a test, but like I said, there was a couple of people that they tested several times, and then about 3 days later, they eventually tested positive. So in the middle of being sick, they were still testing negative, and then eventually they tested positive. And so that's why I'm like, wouldn't rule it out, but I also wouldn't get all worked up about it. I just treat it as it is. And, you know, there's always the potential that other viruses are also mutating, and we just need to be very immune aware of our environment and what's going on in our bodies, and just keep our immune systems really super strong.
Yoli, how would you use that for?
Neoli, so you could do that a couple different ways. You could put it like in a liniment or something, you know, like the witch hazel, and like rub it all over the body. You can take a bath. You can take several drops internally. Like I do 2-3 drops internally, like 1 to 2 times a day. Neoli is one that I even put on the body in kind of a big dose neat. Like around here, the bay laurel, the Ravensara, the Eucalyptus radiata, and the Neoli. Like when we're getting ready to travel or something, I'm going to say I just put 25 or 30 drops on my back. I do way more than that, but we'll just say 25 or 30 drops. Neat, and, you know, just rub it in. And so the back is a good delivery place for it, just because, you know, you're hitting the spinal area, and you're hitting the lymph vessels and all that. You know, big surface area that's not super sensitive skin wise and everything. So it's a good place to do a big dosage of that.
And then you mentioned the blue oils.
Yeah, for gargles. Yeah, gargle are internal, and that's purely for inflammation in the throat.
So I have blue tansy, but the color's not blue. Is that
Yeah,
okay?
it's the regular blue tansy. Yeah, that would still work. Yeah. There's a regular and then a dark. Either one would work.
And it's labeled dark on the website.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you so much, Greg.
Yeah, you're so welcome.
And then go ahead, Ralph, then Miriam, then Denise and Sonia.
Hey, Greg.
Hey.
First question. How many drops are there in a 5 milliliter bottle?
It actually depends on the oil. Like some are a bit thicker and more viscous. Usually I would say like maybe 125 to 150, but sometimes there's a little more and sometimes they're a little less.
Yeah.
Depends on how viscous the oil is, you know, because like when you turn it over and the drops come out, the drops, depending on how viscous or how like
how fast it comes out. Yeah.
The drops are different sizes. And so, you know, that's the thing, even when blending, you know, the pipettes that we use to measure the drops, there's different sizes of pipettes, and the pipettes are different than the drops that come out of the top of the bottle.
I can imagine.
So, like if you're blending, then you can't go like, well, 10 drops of this and 10 drops of that, one being from the bottle and one being from the pipette, because it is not even.
Yeah.
And so, I would say 125-ish.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. In the Q&A class that we did the other weekend, under endocrine issues number C, 18 pituitary. Okay. And you had under pituitary, the comment was hypothalamus regulates other glands, frankincense and myrrh. Would this be equally applicable for an age-related situation where a person is aging?
Wait, say it again. What are we addressing?
Is it so on the pituitary gland,
Right.
okay, and the hypothalamus, according to the notes that I wrote
Right.
down in class,
Right.
is this equally applicable for an age-related situation where a person is aging and their body's beginning not to work quite as well as it used to? So could we dose up on frankincense and myrrh to,
Yeah, you could do that. I would say I would do both. I would do frankincense and myrrh mixed together.
okay,
And I would do like either Sylvester pine or black spruce at the same time.
okay,
Yeah. Naoli would also work in this.
okay,
Vitex will work for men and women. And I tend, Vitex does treat a couple of things for male issues, but they're like really severe issues in the pelvis. And so a lot of times I don't usually talk about them unless somebody, directly asks about it.
mhm,
And so usually I just use Vitex for women, just because there is some hormonal mimicking that happens with some of like progesterone and things like that. And so with Vitex. And so I tend to go Sylvester pine or black spruce for everybody.
yeah,
But if there's menstrual cycle issues or the woman's like starting to be late 30s, early 40s, I start doing it just as like a tonic for the reproductive organs. And
okay,
so would still affect the pituitary, but black spruce and Sylvester pine are amazing for the pituitary. And then the frankincense and myrrh is really super good for stimulating glandular secretions through the whole system and toning the hypothalamus.
okay. So if a person like, okay, I'm now the tender age of 70 years old and I know some of my body isn't working quite as well.
Mhm.
So just start mixing a little frankincense and myrrh, put it on neat.
I would
or
take it internal, to be honest with you.
Internal, okay,
Yeah. Couple drops.
okay,
The Sylvester pine and the black spruce, you could get away with putting several drops like on your wrist and then just rubbing them together like that,
okay,
or on the top of your feet. But the frankincense and myrrh, I'd take it.
okay,
Yeah.
all righty,
Yeah. And so one of the other things that I would suggest also is you could do long-term Moroccan thyme.
okay,
The Moroccan thyme would reduce inflammation in the body, which
Yeah.
as we get older, just slows down the aging process. Strengthening to the thymus and inflammatory processes and things, but also for men, it's also strengthening to male reproductive organs. And
Okay.
so just like, a couple drops internally, it would just be like toning, like, you know what I mean? It's, if there was some serious issue, you could go and try to do things like a bit stronger, but
Yeah.
for just like a little bit of, because the issue there, both for men and women, as we get older, as the reproductive hormones start to fluctuate, that does affect our immunity.
Yeah.
It does make us more susceptible to getting sick. It makes us more susceptible to not getting better faster, all those things. And so
And also just generally energy levels in life.
general energy and a little pep in your step. And the thing too is, you don't even notice them, but it's tied to a little bit of brain function, and it can improve like bowel movements, like when the reproductive glands are regulated.
Yeah.
It does a bunch of stuff we don't even think about. And so keeping that strong and healthy, it's important, not just for sex drive and all of that. I mean,
Yeah.
that's fine, but there's a bunch of other processes that also need to be addressed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
You're so welcome.
And then go ahead, Miriam, then Denise, Sonia,
Hey,
and
Miriam.
Marianne.
Hi.
Greg,
Um,
how are you?
Hey.
I have a question remember about a month ago, I was telling you about my thumb, how it was sort of clicking and sort of not, and there was no pain. And you recommended, you said, follow it down the arm and find.
Mhm.
Okay, all right. So I did that. And I didn't do it hard, but the next morning, my whole arm was inflamed.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And you put the oil on and you just rubbed it and it got really super inflamed.
Yes. Now, over the past several weeks, it's become a regular thing. Like I go to sleep at night, and sometime during the night, I notice that my thumb is clicking. But it's a little more, I'm noticing the pad around the thumb is a little sore. I'm noticing the joint below this joint is a little sore, and it feels like there's a ligament moving.
Yeah.
And I'm noticing with all my fingers, it's the other fingers they're not quite so dramatic, but there is a sensation of ligaments moving on the backs of the knuckles. And there's no pain there. There is some pain in the thumb area now, and it's more prominent. Sometimes
How fast did it take how long did it take for the inflammation to go down on the arm?
it goes down immediately. It's like it goes down immediately. So what I've been doing is I'll gently massage the thumb pad or the fingers. I will rotate my arms.
Is Dave home right now? Is Dave home right now?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to do a little experiment. Okay, I'm going to have Dave, take his fingers and find your pulse on your wrist.
Hold it. Dave, he's downstairs. We're up in the main house. Dave, could you come up for a moment? He's working on it. Can you hear him walking up the steps?
Yeah.
Greg's gonna guide you as to what
Yeah,
to do.
we're sharing really embarrassing stories, and we thought you'd like to really share a really big embarrassing story, and so we just thought we'd call you into the.
Thank you.
Yeah.
He can't speak today.
So this is what I'd like you to do. Just touch her wrist and find her pulse. And you're not really taking her pulse, you're just finding it, find how strong it is. And then I'm going to have her lay on the ground with her arm up like this and just rest her arm back and give it about 30 seconds. And with her arm back, go and touch her pulse. And see, it's going to be a little bit less, it's going to be a little bit weaker. But what I'm wanting to see is, does it completely go away? Does it get really super weak? Does it go away, or does it just get a little tiny bit weaker?
Okay, I'm gonna go lie down.
Okay, so, and I'll call you back right after this next question. We'll come right back to you.
Go ahead.
First.
Hey, Denise.
Yeah, so we're trying to find someone.
My turn, Denise?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Okay, well, I wanted to ask the gentleman that asked you, it was Time Moroccan? Is that what it was?
We were using it for stimulating the thymus, which is tied to your immune response, and reducing inflammation. in the body. You know, it's anti-inflammatory. It's very good for low-grade infections and things. And it's also very good for anybody that has like a potential for autoimmune issues or has an autoimmune issue. It helps to regulate the thymus. But then part of what it does, especially for males, is it acts like a tonic for the reproductive system. I mean, it's not like crazy strong or anything, but it's just a little bit fortifying to the male reproductive system. Now, for females, Vitex or Anise would be your go-to ones for that.
Vitex or what? And the other one was
Or anise, anise or anise, like ANISE.
Thank you.
There's also Bible leaf, but I would probably stick with Vitex or anise for that.
Thank you. I have a hematoma from my surgery, and I was supposed to. The plastic surgeon took the stitches out, and it kind of bled back.
This was on your face?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, I remember.
There was, so it's a pretty. They don't think I should probably go ahead and massage the scar tissue until the hematoma is done.
I agree. Don't be, yeah, for one, it'll hurt. And then two, like you want the body to like kind of absorb it kind of naturally and everything. So the thing to do here, and it's also going to address the scar, but for hematomas is put a few drops of helichrysum on the site.
And just like, with the Q-tip or my finger, just like.
Oh, you could put that like on your palm and just kind of like blot it on, or like on your fingers and just kind of rub it in, real light. Don't dig into the hematoma, but just like kind of pat it on, like when you're doing the orange oil for like spots.
Yes.
You put it on a Q-tip because you don't want to get the orange oil on your fingers because it will like kind of
burn. It froze.
And I put several drops on and then just like pat it on the area and then call that good.
I can't tell if it's mine. I don't know if I dropped or they dropped. I'm sorry. Okay, thank you.
It's not just him. It's not just you. He's freezing on my end too.
Thank you so much for letting me know that. Maybe it's those solar flares.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you. Okay, see, I think I got it. I have it. The other, it kind of took care of the other question because I just slammed my fourth toe over into, I caught it right on the edge of a box. So I did put the helichrysum and quickly, very quickly. But it still kind of hurts. Is there anything else I can do besides that?
So with that, like when you really smash a toe, I mean, you put the helichrysum on, and then the kind of the best next thing you can do is tape that toe to the toe next to it, like tape them together, and it really stabilizes the toe. It makes it very easy to walk, reduces the pain, and it's very helpful. You can still be putting the helichrysum on it. I would put it on that for a little while just to keep the inflammation down and again the bruising. But I would say I probably have fractured my toes, I don't know, 8 or 10 times or something. And, first few times I went to the doctor, and that's what they basically did, is they just taped them up. And after that, I just I do what we just said, helichrysum, tape them up. And, it's a few days of discomfort, but it usually passes even if there's a fracture. Like, there's nothing they can do except just immobilize it. So, if you do want, like if you're concerned that there might be a fracture, is still do the things we talked about, but then put a little bit of marjoram up a little bit higher on the leg, like up on the shin area. And that helps to reduce spasms, but it helps to increase the circulation, and it's very nourishing to the bone, and it will help the bone heal if there is some sort of fracture or something. It helps it heal faster. Yeah.
And I put that on just straight right on my skin. I can
Yeah,
mark
just
it.
like, 4 or 5 drops up on the shin, like, mid chin. It doesn't even have to be close to the foot.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And
you're so welcome.
the last thing is just that scar itself. Can I gently put the helichrysum
Yeah.
on it now?
Yeah,
Yeah, just the same as around the
Yeah.
hematoma.
yeah.
Excellent. Thank you for
Yes.
your help. I appreciate
You're so
it.
welcome. Keep us posted on that. Keep us
Oh,
posted.
absolutely.
Yeah,
I'm in. You can count on it. Thank you.
Good. Yeah. Hey, Miriam.
Hi.
So pulse or no pulse?
Pulse.
Pulse. Okay, that's a good sign.
Thank you.
So you got it in the pads.
I have another, let me throw something else out.
Okay.
About 40 years ago, I had a strange illness. Don't know what it was. Seemed to go through my whole body. My nervous system was affected. It started with a nasty headache, and my hands and my feet would cramp. And I get these shooting pains up the back of my feet, back of my legs. And I actually was seen by a doctor at Brigham and Women's, and they thought it might be some form of Epstein-Barr, but I wasn't tired, so they were guessing. And then eventually it went away. They said it was a virus, and it went away. And there's something in this that is making me think about that. Sometimes I get
It might be a virus that just lay dormant. Because I know, like, I think you ordered some things a week or two ago for just like general inflammation in the body.
Yeah.
I mean, the thumb thing, like I get it's an odd place for the clicking to happen, but it can happen. But the thing where you have a little bit of an issue in the middle of the pad of your thumb, that's nerve. Like, there's some sort of weird nerve thing. And so what I had Dave do, like by checking your pulse, was basically it's a really crude way of checking for a thoracic outlet syndrome, which would be something in your shoulder. It's compressing nerves and blood flow and all of that. And so, it could always be coming from the neck as well, but a big one for potential just weird things down in the hand is always thoracic outlet syndrome. And so if you had thoracic outlet syndrome, when you raised your hand like this and then, rested it back like that, it would cut off the blood supply. And so you don't have that. And so
although my shoulders have been, all my joints, I don't know, something about the spring, early summer, my skeletal system goes nuts and then it calms down.
Every year or just this year?
Every year.
Wow.
I must be allergic to something.
Yeah.
Right.
Given where you're at, I would say maybe molds.
Could be. Well, I know mold is not my friend.
Yeah. Okay. How has your gut been? Like, how is your digestion been?
Fine.
Like normal, like for you, whatever normal is, or has it been erratic?
It's been fine.
Okay. And respiratory stuff has all been fine.
All good.
Cognitive stuff, like you're able to process information, you're not having foggy brain.
Well, it's okay now, but beginning of spring, I was stupid as a post. I couldn't think of it. I couldn't think straight.
Okay.
Like early pollen and early spring.
And you haven't had COVID in the last couple months or anything like that?
Nope.
Okay. So how's your sleep been?
It's pretty good.
Okay. You're falling asleep okay? You're staying asleep okay?
Pretty much. I'd say I might get up once or twice.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Um, all right. This is, we're going to treat it more like a general thing going on in your body rather than site specific. I mean, the foggy thing is usually pretty stagnant lymph. It could be because of inflammation, just could be because of poor lymphatic circulation. One of the things that happens with allergies is like the lymph, like fluid, can get real viscous, like it can get really thick.
Mhm.
And, part of the thing when we think of lymphatic function, we think sometimes of the immune system, and we think about it also as being part of the circulatory system, because it's cleaning up what the circulation leaves behind, but one of the things is that the lymphatic function also is working hand in hand with part of the autonomic nervous system. And sometimes when you have really weird lymphatic issues and it's just not clearing up, I mean, there's a couple things you go for. You look at lymph nodes, which I think you're probably okay there. But I'd say viscosity is a little bit of an issue. And I want to visit the sympathetic nervous system. And by visiting the sympathetic, it kind of helps to improve the function of the parasympathetic. You seem to be sleeping okay, but the achiness, something's up with the lymphatic system. Whenever the body's achy like that, something's up with lymphatic system, and you have enough of the symptoms where I'd say that could be it. And so lymphatic function, when it's not like proper, definitely can cause like weird neurological things. And this is a little bit of an odd one, the thumb pain in the middle of the pad. For me, that sounds like there is some sort of compression further up the neural pathway. We checked for thoracic outlet syndrome, doesn't seem to be there. So it could just be basically fluid retention that is tied to inflammation. And so there's a couple of things I'd like you to do.
Okay.
One is lemongrass. You could take it internally. You could put it in like alcohol or witch hazel and rub it all over your body. You could do both, like either way. That's going to help the lymphatic circulation by improving the autonomic nervous system and its function.
I do that every.
So,
I
okay.
do
So
that.
are you doing it all over your body,
No.
or you take it
No,
internally?
internally. Internally.
Okay. So how much are you taking every day?
2-3 drops.
Okay.
Once
Let's have it double that, and then do it topically as well.
Okay.
And then like when I say double it, like morning and then night.
Oh, you
Not-
don't mean
not-
warm.
Not all at once. Yeah, not all at once. And
Okay.
then my first choice would be some form of pepper, like that you would put on the body, or a salt bath, or just to get the lymph to be a little bit more like fluid. Pepper is really good for that.
Okay.
If you don't have pepper, do some of the softer times, but with that, you'd have to do it internal. The pepper, you can do topical.
Okay. Is there a reason I wouldn't want to do it internally?
The pepper won't work that great for it internal. Like
I
it
mean,
needs to
time.
be. If you want to do it, like yeah, I don't want to overload your system.
Okay.
If you feel you can handle it, but softer times, like time linalool, thuyonol, time geranol, benchmark time. What else would be a good one? Even time serpulette would probably be okay. But like red time, white time might be a little too harsh.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the other thing that I would have you rub vetiver on parts of your body.
Mhm.
Like in a massage oil. I mean, you could do a liniment as well, but you're already doing a liniment a couple of times. You could let it dry and then just put some vetiver and like some sesame oil and just rub it on your chest and your abdomen.
Okay.
Yeah. I do that every day for at least a good solid week.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and basically like the vetiver will be relaxing to the body, increases and improves circulation, but in a way that's like cool or cooling rather than generating heat, right? And then, you know, the thing that we don't think about with vetiver is it's actually quite a substantial like immune system stimulant. Like it actually works very good for that. And so it's not so much about like preventing viruses and bacteria, but the immune function is like real general, and it would just be like kind of fortifying to lymphatic function.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not like the go-to thing where you go, oh, I have a lymphatic issue, I'm gonna go to vetiver. You use like vetiver in that particular scenario to augment something that's already in place. Like vetiver gets used as the primary for a lot of other things, but here it's more to augment what's already happening.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, I would do that. Like I don't know that you need to address the lymph nodes, but a thing that I keep visiting in my mind, and right now I'm going to say like maybe not, but I'm gonna throw it out there in case you want to experiment, is a little bit of cypress.
Okay.
And
How?
that would have to be internal.
Uh-huh.
And the reason being that I suspect your pancreas is a little bit weak.
Okay.
And so it would just, it would help to reduce inflammation in the body because of improving the function of the pancreas. Like the pancreas isn't causing all these problems in your body, but you know, it starts to throw off like enzymes and things in the body, and your body doesn't have the ability to fight off inflammation the way that, you know, it normally does. And you're dealing with some weird inflammation.
Mm.
Are you retaining fluid at all?
You know, I don't think so.
I don't think so either, but I still wanted to ask.
I'm
So
not-
let's stick with what we have and go from there. But I think this is a solid approach for right now. I mean, it's a weird thing, and so we'll treat it and we'll start seeing. And sometimes, you know, sometimes it gets better and sometimes it gets partially better, and whatever happens, it kind of will tell us a little bit more of what's going on with you. I suspect you had a virus back then that lay dormant in your body. Like it's one of the ones where Some they're there and they die away, and then there's some that you get them and you have them. Like, you know, they're not an issue, but something was up back then.
Yeah.
Did you have any sort of brain scan or anything back then?
No,
Okay.
no.
I don't know that you needed it. I'm just
Yeah.
fishing. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just being curious.
Over the years, doctors have questioned meningitis.
That's where I was kind of nonchalantly trying to go.
Yeah, but it was never tested.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, okay.
Thank you.
Well, let's try what we're trying and we'll go from there. The other thing with the vetiver is it does help to strengthen the brain. It does it more by balancing out the brain. And if you're concerned about brain fatigue, regular sage, Dalmatian sage, sage triloba, all of those are very good for brain fatigue.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how would I take those?
8-10 drops on your wrist, like just,
On wrist.
and then rub it. Yeah, just rub them together. Yeah.
Okay. I
I don't think you need to do that right off the bat, but
Okay.
I would probably throw that in the mix a little bit later down the line. But yeah, I mean, I like to do sage just as like a brain tonic. You know, I do it with rosemary and basil as well, but about every 4 or 5 weeks, I do about 5 days of just a big dosages of sage, just to try to keep the brain strong. You know, body's getting older. Got to keep that brain doing the brain things it needs to do. Like, you know what I mean?
I'll do anything.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There's a coffee mug that said, I can't brain today. You know, not that far off sometimes when the head gets real foggy.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll let you know.
Yeah, keep us posted. If you need to, shoot us an email or something.
I will.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then go ahead, Sonia, then Marianne.
Hey, Sonia.
Do you hear me?
Yeah.
The Amen clinics just put out a paper saying that more and more the research is showing that long COVID has a relation to inflammation and vagus nerve dysfunction. And
Like losing tone, or like what's it saying?
it says a link between COVID symptoms such as tachycardia, difficulty speaking, and difficulty swallowing with vagus nerve dysfunction. One study used ultrasound to examine vagus nerve in patients with long COVID and found changes such as nerve thickening, as well as signs associated with inflammation. Additional research suggests vagus nerve stimulation may have therapeutic benefits from those suffering with long COVID. And the methods they're talking about are getting vocal, like gargling, singing loudly, humming, and chanting activates the nerve and vagal tone. And reduces anxiety, and reflexology activates vagus nerve, decreases sympathetic response, and lowers blood pressure. And then cold exposure, either a cold shower or going out on a frosty day, or immersing the top half of your face to your cheeks in cold water will elicit the triggers vagus nerve activity and lowers inflammation. And then using your mind to warm your hands counteracts stress response and increases parasympathetic tone and relaxation, and lowers blood pressure. And then high fat and high carbohydrate diets impair vagus nerve signaling, according to a study in Scientific Reports. And fiber-rich foods improves vagal tone for better signaling. And they encourage laughing to stimulate vagus nerve, and meditation for relaxation and anti-anxiety and vagus nerve stimulation and getting active. Blowing on your thumb. This was similar to something that you were talking about. Put your thumb in your mouth and blow on it, but don't let the air escape. Activates the vagus nerve. Breathing deeply, listening to calming music, smelling lavender activates parasympathetic nervous system. Specifically, lavender is found to soothe anxiety. And then other things that they encourage generally to relax are use of low levels of GABA, magnesium, helps GABA receptors, which calms the brain and reduce anxious thoughts, and probiotics for a healthy and calm mind by calming the gut, and omega-3 fatty acids can reduce anxiety, and L-theanine in green tea inhibits excessive firing of neurons, which results in a feeling of calmness and more self-control.
Okay.
I can send you the paper.
Sure. Yeah, and so anytime you're trying to improve vagus nerve, the thing that gives it more tone is marjoram is super good for that. Hyssop can be somewhat good for stimulating parasympathetic activity. A little bit more for the medulla, but marjoram is usually a go-to thing. Yeah, and then times where, like some of the earlier things you were talking about, anise or anise, however you want to say it, taking a few drops internally helps to balance out the nervous system and the involuntary part of the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system. And so that can also be very helpful. Like whenever you have like swallowing issues or gulping of air, anything like that, anise is kind of the go-to thing for that.
You know, when for when the throat narrows front to back, and you were saying that that's vagus nerve affecting what muscles in the back of the in the back?
Are you talking about like with croup, or like what are you talking about? Like with croup or?
No, well, on the CAT scan, my throat is narrowed front to back, and but my whole alimentary system is slow. It's slow in terms of the peristalsis, and it started with the meningitis.
Yeah, cinnamon for the peristalsis. A couple drops internally, and then I would start working with like pepper and things on the neck to open up the fascia. And then that weekend where we did the study group weekend, there was some stretches that we showed with that. I would actually do those stretches, but I would trade it with the pepper for a little while on the neck, just to keep opening up the fascia like that. That sounds like a lot of fascial restriction.
You know, I have a lot of reaction to hot oils and hot stuff. You know, I'm Pitta-Vata.
You could use pink pepper. It's not very hot.
Okay.
If you don't want to use pepper at all, you could use Palo Santo fruit.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Marianne, then Michelle, Ralph, and Megan.
Hey, Marianne.
I just have a question. I'm wondering if you have a method to apply oils to one's back without wasting the oil.
Oh boy, that's a hard one. Yeah, that's a hard one. You know, one of the ways, like you said, like you can drip it down kind of like that, but still that's kind of wasting some of it.
Yeah.
So getting in a bath and doing it, that could be one way. So we had this young guy that this is how he resolved this issue, is he took a kitchen garbage bag and he mixed whatever he was going to use with some vegetable oil and he poured it out on the bag, and then he laid on the bag and went,
Oh,
and then got up and put a shirt on.
interesting.
And so I laughed hysterically the first time he said it, and I started to say that's ridiculous, and then I stopped and I thought about it. I was like, kind of genius. Like it really, like it addresses the issue. It doesn't make a mess. It gets it right where you need it to go. I was like, I'm laughing, but it's kind of smart. Like,
Well-
you know, because like, you know, you see those like Theracanes, you know, where they look like a cane, two canes like glued together.
Yeah.
And I used to, this is a long time ago, I used to put the oil on a Theracane, and then I would go and I'd rub the spot, and then I put a little more on, and then I'd rub the spot. And super time consuming, and it worked, but it took a long time, you know,
Yeah.
because that little ball is only so big and you can only put so much on there. And when he told me that he did that, I was like, man, 2 minutes, you're done. Like, it's just, you're done. And so I've never done it personally, but he swore by it.
I think I'll try it.
Yeah.
The baths don't work for me because I don't bathe anymore, because if I get down in the tub, chances are I won't
Yeah.
get
Oh
up.
yeah. I get you.
So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have a chair, but that might work. I do have another thing on a stick, but that I have upper arm problems anyway.
Yeah.
And that just wasn't an answer, but that
Yeah.
might work, or something similar.
And I think like the thing was that I think it's like he didn't use a new garbage bag every time. Like he would put it down, and then when it was done, he would fold it up and then pull
And
it
just
back out the next
leave
day
it.
and go right back to it. And so, you know, if there was a little left over for the next day, he said he'd just wiggle around and just
Yeah.
make sure he got all the areas, and then he'd jump up, throw a shirt on, fold the bag up, and call it good.
I'm gonna try that. That might work.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're so welcome.
And then go ahead, Michelle, then Ralph, Megan, Denise, if we have time.
Hi there. I have two questions. One is about liver spots.
Okay.
What's recommended for that?
So there's a couple different things that I'm aware of that you could do. One is like, first we'll talk about like non-essential oil, right? So one is I've had several clients get water that was not alkaline, but like acidic water. You know how like sometimes people have water purifiers and they'll make really super alkaline water, but the byproduct is a little bit of acidic water. They would take that acidic water and rub it on the liver spots, and it makes it go away, they said, kind of quickly. How you get access to water that's acidic other than using a water purifier, I don't know, but that is one potential, you know, remedy, right? The other one is lemon oil on the spots. It takes like several weeks. I would probably also support it internally with a little bit of lemon oil as well. Now, the issue is that when you put the lemon oil, you know, and you're just doing it neat, like, you know, you put like a drop or two on the area and just kind of rub it in. But if that area gets exposed to the sun, you know, anytime, you know, several hours, even after applying the oil, it is going to turn like a dark color for a little while. And so whatever you're doing, I would probably do it like at night before you go to bed, so that if there is a lot of direct sunlight on the area, it doesn't have the reaction. And I would try to keep it out of direct sunlight as much as possible as you go through and you do this treatment. But that's the thing we've got the best success with. It doesn't work every time, but it works a majority of the time.
Okay, and would that also apply to freckles or just general sunspots?
Freckles? You know, I do remember like people using lemon juice way back in the day for freckles. I can't say that I've ever really treated freckles. And
Okay.
so I would probably try it on that as well. And that I would think you could even put the lemon in a little bit of like soap or like aloe vera or a little bit of alcohol and rub it on the area. It doesn't need to be neat. Liver spot, I would say it probably needs to be neat. But the other things, I think you could just, it's going to take repetition for a little while. But that would be probably my best bet with oils.
Okay, super,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
And then the other was I experienced a betrayal some time ago, and it was a definite shock to my system, to my nervous system. And I haven't really been able to inform my nervous system that it's can relax
Okay.
now.
Yeah. And so when you say a shock, like something with a relationship or something with work or something like that? You don't have to
Yeah,
go
it
into
was a
details, just give me an idea.
Yeah, it was like the rug being pulled out from you in a marriage.
Okay. So I would say a couple of things. For one, I would say, are you still feeling like a little bit in shock over the situation?
I think it's some time ago, so I think the shock is over, and it's like I've done, like forgiveness practices, but I'm still on guard and
Okay.
like
Yeah.
always searching.
How long ago did this happen?
It happened 5 years ago.
Okay, so I would say helichrysum. I would do helichrysum inhalation, and you could think of the situation, and then you could also put a few, like 4 or 5 drops in with like a little bit of lotion and rub it on the chest, like on the heart. Pulling you out of fight flight. I mean, if it was immediate, I would say Tarragon. Like that is like, if we were talking, it was like this happened 2 weeks ago, and yada yada yada, I'd say Tarragon is your new best friend. Tarragon still might be helpful, because like you said, like you used really good term there, like you're like on guard. And so that's the thing with trauma is when we have a traumatic event happen, there's a little piece of us that it's still in that space where that incident happened. And so it still feels like it's happening. So how much time has gone by sometimes is almost like confusing, because there's a piece of you that is still experiencing it right here, right now, right? And so the helichrysum will help reduce the trauma and help you move past the traumatic event. But I, like you said, I think there's a little bit of like a shock or an on guard component to it. And so you could try Tarragon. The next thing I would say, this would probably be my first choice, actually. It would be marjoram. Marjoram, for a couple of reasons, right? So for one, marjoram's really activating to the heart. So it helps you to like integrate, and it helps you to transmute the emotional component to it, right? It also helps to deal with, like you said, you're working on forgiveness, and if there's like some resentment or something, most of that is generated at first in the body. Like it's not even necessarily always there's an emotional component, a mental component, but your body also got betrayed and also goes into this like kind of crisis mode. And so the marjoram is really good for that. And marjoram pulls you out of fight flight significantly. And so you would inhale that or put several drops of it. Like for this, I would put it on your abdomen and on your low back area. The low back area is what we're kind of looking at and shooting for. Do you still have interactions with this person?
Yes.
Okay, so the other thing that I would maybe follow that up with is rue, like the thing rue. So for a couple of reasons. Rue helped you with getting pulled out of fight flight somewhat. It helps you to disconnect from negative connections with people. And it helps you deal with, it helps you to resolve conflict. And,
Okay.
Even if everything is like okay and you guys are getting along, like the new now is like you're getting along, but the old stuff is done. There's still the conflict of the old stuff. You know what I mean? There's still like hurt feelings, and there's still negotiating all the things and changes that happened in the relationship and the finances and whatever it is. And so the root, you could just you don't even have to wear that one. You could put a couple drops on, but I would actually just inhale it right out of the bottle. Like I would just open it up and just take long, slow, deep breaths and think of the person, or the situation. I would do that every evening for, 15, 20 breaths. And it does help to release the energetic connection between you and the person, especially the negative things.
Okay.
I would say that's a real big one. Like if there's still some psychological things like grinding on the situation, on the person, on what happened, whatever that is, there's that blend Splendor. So basically I'm kind of like breaking down in pieces of the PTSD kit, which is you start off with tarragon, then you hit rue to disconnect and come out of fight flight and be able to process and not go to weird hypotheticals, because that is tied to the stress response and the trauma response. The hyssop diminishes the back and forth between you and the person, and it diminishes the tendency to absorb negativity in situations. And then the Splendor just flushes out anything emotional that's left over. I mean, a Splendor was made specifically for PTSD. And that you had the rug pulled out from you so hard, I mean, that is a big stress response, trauma response, but I would say that is traumatic stress, and so you might have been able to pull a good portion of it out, but you're still probably dealing with like your guard being up. And do you have the thing where you have like startle really easy?
Yeah, and even in as we're talking about it now,
you got a little bit.
Yeah,
yeah. So I would go through that. We have a PTSD kit, or if you have the oils, tarragon, then rue, then hyssop, then Splendor. And you can follow the patterns that are on the thing, or you can just inhale them. Like you can just sit. And when I was doing stuff with the guys coming back from the war, I didn't have them do patterns. I would just have them hold the bottle, inhale it, hold the next bottle, inhale it, hold the next bottle, inhale it. And we were getting good results. And so, yeah, but like the startle response, there's other things too that you would look for, but the startle response usually means like you said, the guard is up and you get startled really easy, you're still in a bit of a traumatic state.
Yeah,
you're
as
still in
one
that
example,
yeah.
my son's skateboard went out from under him and I was in the house and I could feel like electricity. Like it felt
Yeah.
like my vagus nerve was like plugged
Yeah.
into a socket.
Yeah. Yeah, so try doing that and just see if you can get things to calm down. Helichrysum would be an add-on and marjoram would be an add-on, but the PTS protocol would be the big one.
Okay, I'll start with
Yeah.
that. Well, thank you for sharing all your amazing knowledge.
Oh,
and
you're so
wisdom.
sweet.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, and sorry that happened to you.
Thank you.
And then go ahead, Ralph, and then Megan, and then if we have time in the chat.
Era.
Greg, Revansara for strengthening the body, couple of drops internal.
Couple drops internal, and I mean, Ravensara is amazing in a way that like you could use it just about any way. You could inhale it, you could put it on the body neat, you could take a salt bath in it.
So that's wrist on the wrists, on the top of the feet.
On the wrists, on the top of the feet and the temples. You know, when I was doing healings full time, you know, usually, you know, because I'd start real early in the day, and usually by like late afternoon, the body would start getting tired. I'd put like 4 or 5 drops of water and drink it, and boom, I had clarity and strength to get through the rest of the day. And it wasn't like drinking a couple cups of espresso. It was just like I had endurance.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
They with Ravensara, they refer to it in medical aromatherapy as a good like environmental treatment, but the environment is like your inner environment. Like it doesn't do a lot of like super specific things. It just starts to strengthen all the processes and fortifies it and balances some things out, and it's just good for like harmonizing and strengthening the whole environment of the body.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks.
Yeah, you're so welcome.
Go ahead, Megan.
Hey, Greg.
Hey,
So I kind of have a question, but also I just want to ramble for 30 seconds and then you just say whatever's interesting and helpful for any of us. So I've been like studying Astara and I'm loving it. And coincidentally, I started reading the books several months ago. I went through this phase where I was just afraid of death, and I was just really thinking about that all the time. I turned 40 and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm really
so mine where I had the meltdown like that was when I turned 30. Like,
oh, that's funny. Yeah.
Like
And it's so ironic because I've been reading spiritual books for years, like even as a teenager. And I was always like, oh, I'm all sorted out with that because I know what happens and I know it's all going to be okay. But then you get to a different age and suddenly it just gets more real. And anyway, I love that Astara, if anyone else is interested, devotes like 2-degree lessons or 2.5-degree lessons to just that. And so it was really awesome.
Quite a bit. Like they talk about transition and death and after death quite a lot in the books.
Yeah, where you go, where you live, what it looks like. I was like, wow. So I loved all that gory detail. But then I had a phase where I was afraid to go to sleep. I was like,
okay,
what am I doing for 8 hours? Where am I going? What, you know, and some of that is answered in Astara too, of course. And like, I can verbalize those answers, but I also want to just ask it, like, if you could talk for a few minutes. Oh, it's only 5:25 already. So, and then last piece of my question, like there was a night where I was drifting off to sleep one time and I started to, none of this was visual in any way, but I just had awareness that I was meeting up with people that I knew and we were getting back to work on something. And it startled me completely. So I woke up and I was like, well, what was I doing? Who are these people? What were we working on? Like it could, like a work project, but I have no idea what it was. Like, what's an example of a work project we're doing at night?
Well, so we all do kind of versions of that. And the issue is that when we're in the sleep time, we'll call it sleep time / dream time. When we're in that state, you know, sometimes you're just dreaming and you're doing like stress, kind of like I call it like garbage processing. Like that person was a jerk today, and oh, I was super stressed out, and oh, I didn't make the deadline, and you're just kicking out, and oh, I watched a weird thing on TV, and then I went to the, that's just kind of garbage processing. You're just processing the day and everything. Then you have stuff where you're processing things that are like deep, and they might get stimulated by something in the day, but it's usually like a pattern or something that triggers this like process, and you're kind of either problem solving or like learning something based on what you're dreaming and how you're processing it. And so being aware of those dreams is helpful, because you bring it forth into your day. And sometimes if you have a really intense dream, you kind of feel a little out of it as the beginning of the day is. You're in the process of kind of bringing that forward into your waking mind or from the unconscious, right? And so that is very powerful. And if you do something like Om Mani Padme Hum before you go to bed, you'll become more aware of it while you're doing it, and it makes it easier for you to recall it in your waking mind and bring it forth. It doesn't happen right off the bat, but if like you just right before you go to bed, you just sit and chant Om Mani Padme Hum for about 10 minutes. Or for you could also do the Lord's Prayer meditation.
Okay.
Right. And so either one of those, very helpful. Last weekend we had the class that's for processing things in the sleep. So, you could look at portions of that. But then from there, the soul goes off and does things sometimes. And everybody kind of does it. And depending on how developed you could say the mental permanent seed is, depends on how much activity and this isn't the right word, but like how high you get when you're up doing it, like sometimes when those things are happening, you might have like some bad dreams, but it's just because there wasn't enough light and you just ended up in a bad neighborhood. You know what I mean? It's not that you got some weird things going on. You just couldn't bypass. You took the wrong train exit and you ended up in the bad neighborhood. And so you had a bunch of bad experiences, but it's not really you, right?
Okay.
It's just where you got off,
Okay.
And so there are times where you might be doing healing in your work. There's times when you're learning. There's times when you're accessing information. There are times where you might even be getting instruction, and that you're aware of it is great if it happens, but most times people aren't, And so again, doing the sleep work like what we did last weekend, or the Om Mani Padme Hum before bed, or the Lord's Prayer meditation. Like last week we did in the study group, we did the Tara technique where we did the arms and legs with, I can't remember what we did with you guys. I think we did oils or the mantras.
Mantra.
In mantras. And so you can do that because part of your ability to take off in the inner world like that is tied to, like, you could say, how flexible or pliable your basic chakra is.
Okay.
And if you can open that up a little bit and make it a little bit more pliable, a little less rigid, you go up a little bit higher, you retain a little bit more, and you're able to bring it down. And so I would say that's even starting to be in the vein of receiving inner transmissions. Basically the inner transmissions are either embedded in the blue pearl, which is what we would call the inner eye or the center of the pineal gland. or they're streaming through the Blue Pearl, right?
Okay.
And so that even starts to be an even higher degree of that. But
Okay. Okay, thank you.
sometimes, because we have our outer teachers and sometimes we have our inner teachers, and sometimes you might get to interact with your inner teacher in sleep time.
Yeah.
You might not know them by name, but sometimes you get to interact with them.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so one of the things, if that starts happening more intensely, either have an iPad or a tablet by your bed, and right when you wake up, brain dump.
Yeah.
Like brain dump like nobody's business, because a lot of times the act of writing helps you to bring forth more of the information, and it might not make sense to you in the moment, but as you're writing it out, more information comes in and you'll keep processing it through the day and you'll put 2 and 2 together.
Okay.
Yeah. Those
Is
were
there, last
instructions.
thing really quick, in the dream kit, is there any oils in that kit that would help with, that I could put on before sleep, or is that more about helping you to sleep?
No, the dream kit is for exactly that.
Okay.
Yeah, that whole kit.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll do and I have the patterns for it, so I'll do that.
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you, Greg. Thank you.
You're so welcome.